everyone. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. So, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can always follow us there. Every like and share and subscribe can help our channel to be seen by many more Stargate fans. So, we really appreciate it. And then we also have all of our socials listed up on the screen right now if you wish to follow us there. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Bye. And to all the Stargate fans out there, we would love to hear from you and chat with you on our show. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to us via any of our social media platforms or email.
Okay, so I guess we're going to do something a little bit more fun today. And this is partially, you sent me some cool behind the scenes videos, specifically from some child actors on sets, their experience, and also some other videos of things that happened on the set. And actually, I think they're all, maybe I'm wrong, correct me, but I think they're all videos from Dal the Gate. So
actually, yeah, you're right. I didn't even realize that.
So they're all videos from Dal the Gate, and so I thought it's kind of neat to talk about these. And I guess maybe it would be interesting to kind of talk a little bit about our reactions to some of these videos, and also kind of how maybe we think this sort of like little video clips and things that they have on YouTube that go into behind the scenes is like such a nice addition, considering that people don't really buy DVDs anymore where they used to have behind the scenes content.
Yeah.
And so maybe I would start by opening this and ask, back in the time when we had DVDs, did you watch the original behind the scenes content on the Stargate DVDs?
Oh, I must have. It's funny because I don't remember it specifically with Stargate, but I do remember just like always loving behind the scenes stuff, like in anything. Like that was always like my go. Like I almost loved it more. Like, for example, if it was like a movie and they had behind the scenes, I almost loved the behind the scenes more than the movie itself sometimes. And so for me, like I've always like really loved that stuff. And so that's something that I've really missed in modern day. Like it's not done quite in the same way. Like, because they used to kind of take have a someone with a camera or something follow people around literally, you know, behind the scenes, literally like before they're about to start filming something or asking them questions or whatever. And now the way that's done is a little bit different when you do kind of get behind the scenes. It's still like a little bit almost more, I don't know, like it doesn't always feel the same where it's like more produced or there's something that's just kind of different about it now, which I still enjoy behind the scenes modern day stuff. But yeah, so like in terms of Stargate, for some reason I don't actually remember the behind the scenes stuff from it, but I'm sure I must have. If it was on those DVDs that you let us borrow, like then I must have watched it. I have seen like some of those old clips, like when people like will take it and put it up on TikTok and things like that. And I love that kind of stuff and think it's always cool to see the interactions with like the actors that, they're just themselves and you kind of see how they interact, which is way different than their characters. And so I've always really loved watching that. But how about you? Like, do you remember specifics like from when you were watching Stargate and then watching behind the scenes on the DVDs?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not sure, like, so it's interesting because for people that maybe are younger watchers and don't have the experience of DVDs as much, they always had this interesting feature on every DVD release where they would have maybe behind the scenes content. They call it special features. Sometimes you could watch a movie or an episode with commentary and director's commentary, which is kind of interesting. They would sometimes have interviews with directors or musicians or anything, like talking about stuff. The ones I remember from the Stargate were, oddly enough, a lot of the ones that featured like they would talk about the cast and they would have them like show a little bit of behind the scenes of filming. I think there was also some where the directors talked about the process of putting the cast together. And I think that one I kind of remembered because I remember like hearing something, and I'm sure somebody maybe can correct me, but I remember hearing something like that it was cast in the way it kind of was because the particular actors had a lot of chemistry together in SG1. And so I thought this is kind of an interesting thing that I guess in a way set the nature of the series because it's such an ensemble based series. But I would say overall I used to enjoy this as well, and like it kind of added this other supplement, and I think it was like, for me in a way at the time it was kind of, oh, you finished the series, there's nothing left to watch, but you can still get more content by watching the behind the scenes. And because back then
Yes.
there wasn't
Yeah.
like hundreds of hours of YouTube where you could kind of delve into people talking about it, or I mean now there's plethora of things where they talk about Stargate, and I think some of the things we're going to get into where you can keep adding to it with interviewing everyone. And behind the scenes usually focus more on like the primary core groups, but I think some of the videos talk about even people that were just on the show once. And I think this
Yeah.
is something super fantastic about what we have accessible to us now, that they can interview
Yeah.
everybody and you can learn something about all of these people that contributed, because it's all like somehow all the characters and actors and everything that contribute to the show is always so special. Like so
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think it's really cool too to like hear, like if it's someone that's not a main cast member, like hearing their experience of meeting the main cast or what it was like for them to go on like, such a loved show, and, was it intimidating or, and different things like that that you normally wouldn't otherwise hear about. And so I guess that is really true. Like I never thought about that with the older version of like a behind the scenes kind of thing, is you wouldn't ever get that. So that is really cool, like to be able to have like set up interviews that are with like people that are, not from the main cast. So I never thought about it that way. So that is also cool too, I guess now, so that they have like YouTube and different things where people
Mm-hmm.
can be interviewed so easily. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so a few of the videos you sent me originally, a couple from child um actors that were on set, which I thought is kind of interesting to talk about, especially considering how, in a way, there was always this kind of special relationship of Colonel O'Neill and kids, and also other members of SG1. This was kind of they all kind of had their moments with different kids in the show. But the two you
Yeah.
sent me was from Britt Irvin, who played Marin, um, on actually like an episode that always stuck out in my head, um, where they have the nanites in their brain. Like this is one of the most philosophically complex episodes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then also Jeff Gulka. I really hope I'm pronouncing this right. I apologize if I'm not. Please correct me in the comments if I'm not. Who played the Ritu incarnation, Charlie. And actually watching that, then I kind of thought, oh, it's a shame that they didn't really come back, the Ritu. That would have been kind of cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we can just kind of share some of the things that surprised us or that we didn't quite think about of these. But was there anything that stuck out to you for starters in the interview with Britt Irvin?
I think something that initially kind of stood out to me that I never thought about was the time period. Like, because it starts off the interview where she's talking about how back in that time, like I guess the way she would receive information about auditions and stuff was through a fax machine.
Oh,
And so like she was talking about how like when she initially got like the information for this like audition, it was just like page after page after page after page, and it was like a whole pile of it, where sometimes it wasn't like that. So it's like her initial reaction to that was kind of funny, where she was like wondering what the heck is this. And I think just like things that stood out to me from her interview was just kind of like how it really puts into perspective how you're like, oh yeah, she was just a kid when she was doing this. Like you forget, because the character Marin is so like beyond her time, if you compare it to a normal everyday kid, the way she communicates. And I think that's actually what the actress mentioned, is that the way
yes.
the character communicated was quite different. Um, that I think like as a viewer, I forget that the actress isn't like that, if that makes sense. So it was kind of cool to hear like how like for example, her experience with meeting Richard Dean Anderson and her not knowing who he was, but her mom was excited because her mom really knew who he was from like MacGyver and stuff. And and so her mom was like super excited, but she was just kind of like, oh, whatever, like cool. Like, so those little things kind of like stood out to me as kind of just amusing. And then also I was just really impressed with the fact that I think she was only like how old was she? I can't, I never wrote it down. Was she only like 11 or something like that in this? Or was she
Oh, maybe
14?
11 or I didn't catch the age.
I forget, but she was,
Young,
I
yeah.
think she was younger than what I thought she was. So I think it must have been like 11 or something like that, or maybe even younger. I'm not sure. No, I don't know. I'm probably wrong with the age. That doesn't matter. But it was just kind of like interesting, I think, to hear how a child actor responds to a role like this, because this role definitely like the storyline always stood out to me. And I mean, we know how bad my memory is with things. And so it's always like impressive when like an episode actually stands out to me because like, even if I don't fully remember things in detail, like there's always certain episodes that for whatever reason I just always remembered, and this was definitely one of them. This one stood out to me. But yeah, I don't want to babble on too much about it, so we can also get your reaction with it as well.
Yeah. Oh no, it's interesting. What was the name of this episode? I'm trying to because this wasn't was it Learning Curve or no? I don't
I
remember the name.
think so. I think so, wasn't it?
Yes, okay,
Yeah,
Learning Curve.
learning curve. I
Because I
think.
mean, I found it also like I would say I probably had a very similar reaction to you because it never would have occurred to me that the actress actually was kind of saying things that she didn't understand because
Yeah.
the role was so fluid. And I think she said something in this video that it actually somehow made the character work because she was saying repeating these things in a way that was like sort of without, I guess, like some kind of emotional attention because she didn't understand what it mean. And it somehow got this aspect of that character across really, really well for that. And
Yeah.
so I honestly would have never have known. I thought it was really funny that she said at the end that like Richard Dean Anderson was like trying to make her laugh and like sing poop jokes and everything to like get her laugh. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, for people that maybe aren't familiar with Learning Curve, it's one of the most intriguing episodes because especially of this sort of philosophical question of whether what this culture is doing is right or not. And I think for me, that's why it always stuck out. It was like one of those kind of like the knocks where it like forces you to step outside of you. It actually like challenges your own perceptions of what you think is right and wrong. And that's something I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciated about it. But I think in terms of the character, it's such a cool characterization because she's like this, I guess we would call it a whiz kid.
Yeah.
But really, she's sort of designed to pass on knowledge to future generations. And basically, Colonel O'Neill teaches her how to have fun and how to learn. And
Yeah.
then she passes all of that information on, which is kind of cool. But I thought it was an interesting, I did learn quite a bit from that, that I wouldn't, it's like the things you wouldn't think of. Like you probably
Yeah.
never thought of it, and neither did I. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. With Jeff Gulka, if I'm pronouncing that right, I believe with the audition process, he had already had a shaved head because he was in something prior to this. And that I think ended up benefiting him for this role. Like I think then once he auditioned for this role, they just like really loved him. So that like I think he got it right away. Um, my memory of this particular Dial the Gate interview is less clear, so feel free to kind of if you remember it more clearly to let me know. But yeah, I just think again it was the same thing of I'm always surprised with how child actors are, um how they process and perceive things, because it's like I think it can be so easy to forget like their age and forget they're a kid because you see them doing these very like adult abilities of acting so well in something that it can be easy to forget like their age. I don't know what age he was in this. I would have to look that up. So if anyone knows, maybe they could write it down in the comments. But yeah, that was just kind of something that like stood out to me is that he seemed to have just such a strong acting ability at a young age that immediately he kind of got this role.
Yes, no, for sure. And actually, strangely enough, I couldn't imagine the character without a shaved head. Like that actually
Yeah.
suits the character so much, strange, like in a weird way. Like, and maybe that's something that popped out, I don't know, like to them. But it just seems like, especially because he was kind of like created in a hurry and sort of, to send a message. And so it's kind of like he is a kid, but then there's this aspect, it's like not 100% fully like if you created a kid, you would probably also create their hair. So it kind of gave this,
Yeah.
it gave this sort of more, I mean, for lack of a better word, like extraterrestrial kind of, um,
Yeah.
you know, vibe. I thought it was interesting that he said, that, I mean, I know he mentioned some things like he wasn't allowed any sugar, but he mentioned the director, like DeLuise, getting the best performance out of him, and like how they really
That's right. Yeah.
and I was thinking a lot about this that um you mentioned that it's kind of hard easy to forget that they're children on the set, and when I think about it, like a lot of times and sometimes in other shows, like if children show up, I mean, understandably there's somehow less of an integration, or your disbelief suspension can sometimes be lowered. I mean, and especially in shows that are completely geared towards kids, and understandably so because they are kids.
Yeah.
But I think what you mentioned about it being in very adult roles and somehow they like you don't get the sense, oh, this is child actor. Like, and when I think about all of the kids that have really appeared in Stargate, it's like actually these performances are quite astounding. And
Yeah.
especially when you take into context the content, because it's like
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to watch it and then you don't quite think like what must it be like to be like 10, 11, and you're repeating these things that are kind of like unfathomable to you, like, oh, there's these
Yeah.
interdimensional beings that you can't see, and like how do you even manage that? Because when you think about it, the average 10 or 11-year-old can watch and understand Stargate, but on a very different level than, I mean, that's what makes it so rewatchable, honestly. Like I even process it differently as an older adult versus as a younger adult. I can't
Yeah.
even imagine as a
Exactly.
10-year-old versus like a 25-year-old. And so I think it's quite amazing because they do such a good job to make the characters like completely like realistic for what they are. And I think in both these
Yes.
cases, like they they both have this essence of that you don't ever question the character, and it's never takes you out of the moment. Like it's
Yeah.
that deep. Um
That's a really like excellent point because like I remember in his interview as well, he was also mentioning the same as like the other child actor Britt Irvin. It was like the same thing of like not fully understanding what they were saying. And for some reason, that was always a surprise to me that either one of them said that because they seemed like they understood everything perfectly. Like you didn't, like you says, you didn't even question it, right? So it is just like really like interesting. It seems that neither one of us, me nor you, like questioned anything about those characters, and it felt very realistic for what they were supposed to be. And so that yeah, that does all really go into, I think, probably obviously the talent of the actor, but also just how well they are directed. Because I have seen things where, you know, it's nothing against the actors that are in it, but I have seen things where it's maybe like a child actor that has like a tiny role in something and immediately you're taken out of the story because you could just see that they almost look like a deer in headlights and they just kind
yeah,
of say their line and you're just like, oh, poor thing. Like, it's like they're
yeah.
trying their best, but it's like noticeable. So like now that I actually think about all of the really cool roles that have been played by children in Stargate. It's quite amazing, actually.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I think it speaks volumes in the Delegate episode that Jeff said that it is the best episode that he's done. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I think he even like apologized to a show he's another show he's on. He's like, I'm sorry to this other show. I
I
didn't know
think
the
it was
show.
like the X-Files or something, wasn't it?
So I can't remember what it was, but he says this actually Stargate is the best episode I've ever done. And I think it's really amazing that something, I mean, one from that it would stick out that much in your head, and that also like think that kind of speaks volumes to the environment on set. Um,
Yeah.
but it's really interesting because I mean, I think it happens with all of the kid actors, but I think in general that I would say the quality of people of the performances from people that are coming in from for one episode is really high in Stargate. And I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
I have like I've seen some shows. I think I've seen less shows than you probably. Um and I mean, yes, there are some where, especially when the show itself is kind of really more focused on like sort of serious and people and relationship things, that the performances are sort of really deep. And but I think sometimes, especially in science fiction, when I mean, honestly, in most of this sort of science fiction fantasy, yes, there's a lot of character focus, but not always. And so sometimes I think in some cases, like side roles, they're not quite as integrated, or there's less emphasis. I mean, maybe nowadays it's very different, like how they do things, but for sure in some situations it's quite different, I think. And I would say in Stargate, you just see so many instances where the performances is just quite incredible, considering it's like someone that just appears one episode, and that it is a sci-fi show, and that it is a sci-fi show with a little bit of camp. Like there's a little bit of camp in it, but yet a very deep camp. And so I think that's quite, I find that quite amazing. I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Then I think the other two videos we had were these. You send me some videos of a shower prank, and then there's also a video of Peter Williams talking, which actually kind of has this interesting connection with Delegate that I thought was kind of interesting. Um, but I guess that kind of is another aspect of set environment. And I know something that people always talk about with Stargate, like in general, is that there's this sort of lightheartedness and joking atmosphere. And, you know, like Colonel O'Neill is like, he's the O'Neill with two L's, because O'Neill with one L had no sense of humor. And I know even in the show sometimes, for sure, Colonel O'Neill, one of his shticks was that he didn't trust anyone without a sense of humor.
Mhm.
And so I think overall it was a very kind of humorous environment. And I know in the behind the scenes from the DVD, they do talk about some pranks that they pulled. Like I kind of vaguely remember a few like,
Yeah.
you know, funny pranks. I know Amanda Tapping was involved in some too. Like I think they were all kind of jokesters, right?
I think like yeah, and I think Christopher Judge was like one of the main people that always pulled pranks on people too. Like I
Yes.
remember hearing about that often. Like people would say like, I mean, I can't think of specific ones off the top of my head because it was a while ago when I had watched those ones, but I do remember like he would even prank people that were just guesting on the show and stuff. So which I always find so funny because like the vibe of Teal'c as well is just so like very specific. It's a very specific vibe that Teal'c is, right? And so it's always funny to then see the massive shift when it's Christopher Judge as himself. Like, you know, when you do see those behind the scenes things, he's always like laughing and just like a whole different expression on his face. So it just shows like what an amazing actor he is. Like, I don't
Yes.
think he gets enough credit for playing Teal'c because I think
Yes.
like he's such an amazing actor. But I know that's going off topic a little. But with the one that I had sent you where it was Peter Williams, so that was the actor that played Apophis. And
Mm-hmm.
the prank that, so I've heard of other pranks like to me what's funny about what it seems to be common on the Stargate, or especially with SG1 at least on set, is that they were pretty hardcore about their pranks, that it wasn't just like a quick little thing where it's like, oh, let's just laugh at this, giggle, giggle, and like that's it. It was like they would get the whole crew involved. And
Yeah.
so Peter Williams in this interview with Dial the Gate is basically talking about how the scene where he is dying, basically, right? He is that death scene, and he's like basically he's strapped down to the bed. Um, and it's that whole scene. And I guess something about where he was strapped down to the bed, it was time for them to take break. He also really needed to get somewhere else after he filmed this, where he needed to get on a plane. So he had a flight coming up. And so it was like this whole thing where um I don't know if like I don't know why he couldn't see. I would have to look back at that, or if you remember, I don't know why he couldn't visually see. I don't know, like he almost like I don't know if his eyes were closed or something was covered or something in the scene. I'm not really sure. I know they had the weird contacts in his eyes. Maybe that was part of it. But basically, he's strapped down to this bed, and then it's time for break, but he doesn't realize that everyone has left. And so they kind of prank him by him being stuck laying there. And he's like, waiting for someone to like laugh, or waiting for someone to just like unstrap him, because he was stuck on the bed and like no one was there. And it was like a solid 10 minutes that had went by before someone else in the crew finally like coughed or something offset, and then he realized what was going on, and he's like saying, oh come on guys, like I have my flight, you could like help me out of here, kind of thing. And like no one was, they all just like left him. And I've heard of very similar pranks happening with other actors, in different filming sessions, where it's like to me that's more hardcore, to
Yes.
have the whole set just leave and be okay with just leaving someone strapped to a bed, knowing that they can't do anything about it. And then they're just like, just chilling there for 10 minutes. Like that takes it to a whole other level.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like it just goes to show like you probably really have to know the actor and know that they would find it funny, like, and not freak out. And like I think this kind of
Yeah.
shows maybe how the level of like, and I mean, I know Pops is a recurring character, but it's not like he was in every episode. So it also kind of goes to show how much maybe they knew even semi-recurrent actors like on set. But yeah, I would be like unable to handle that. I would be completely panicking.
Yeah, I would hate it. Like, and also just the person doing the prank, I would feel so bad. Like, I wouldn't want to put someone in that position. Like, I'm all for pranks, but like, I think I have like more of like a softer approach to it. Like, to me, like, I would feel so bad leaving someone there just like strapped to a bed.
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
for sure.
like, so but it does show like they all obviously had a similar sense of humor, and like you said, it just shows how close they all were. And then like I think he also mentioned like basically like basically they had set it up for him that he didn't have to worry about catching his flight. He said something about how they would probably have hired a limo, where he got to get a limo to the airport and he was all set and it was fine. But like it was like that brief moment of worrying about missing his flight and worrying about being stuck on this bed and like not being able to move. And then so it's just kind of like funny. And I think too, like he also even spoke about like how like the director had kind of like done like a little indication of like, because they're not told like what's going to happen later on, so he didn't know if he was going to be back on Stargate, and how the director kind of like nudged him, like kind of gave him a little hint of an indication like he may be back, kind of thing. Because he didn't know if he was going to be completely off of Stargate forever, right? When he
Mhm.
dies. So I also thought that was kind of cool. And it just like it's like now that it's like you think of like shooting to this time period of 2025, it's kind of like I've heard so many like horror stories of other shows where it's like the environment was really awful, people were abused, things, people were bullied, cast and crew didn't get along, like all these horrible things. So it's so nice to hear about what it seemed to be like such a wonderful experience for all of the Stargate people. Like I haven't heard anything bad.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
like I think that's part of the charm too, is just like seeing how well everyone also gets along. I mean, another thing with a prank that I didn't actually write down here, but it just came to me now is when oh my gosh, what's his name? The actor that plays Jonas Quinn, Corin Nemec.
Or Nemec.
Um, yeah, I think if I remember correctly, he spoke of a time when he first came on the show where he was pranked by Christopher Judge because Christopher Judge was a smoker. And I think he did something where he had Corin Nemec like go in a trailer that was right next to something where he would get a ton of the cigarette smoke. And that's another thing that I would have hated. I would have been pissed. Like if someone did that to me, like I would not find that funny because I hate like cigarette smoke. But I remember him talking about that, and I'm probably not getting the full story because it's quite a while ago I watched it. Probably it was honestly another Dial the Gate episode, to be honest. But but it was something in an interview where that actor was talking about, you know, how much he was welcomed onto the set, how everyone was very welcoming to him, and how they did prank him like right away. So it was kind of like an initiation process, I
Yeah.
think, with being on Stargate. That is just kind of funny.
I think it's also kind of funny, like you mentioned it being interesting, like Christopher Judge is the one doing a lot of the pranks, like, and
Yeah.
that he's kind of like super, like, you're not surprised when you hear Richard Dean Anderson doing pranks, like you kind of, you're like, oh, okay, of
Yeah.
course he's Joker. Um, but it's also kind of funny, like, to think that, like, when you think of Apophis, it's like somehow they have the audacity to prank Apophis. It's kind of funny. And it's like actually in a really like you said, hardcore way. Like I'm not sure if like it's
Yeah. Yeah.
Apophis. Um, like I know like he's false god, um, but I actually like I also thought it was really cute when they were talking and that to hear that Apophis had such a impact on the creation of Dal the Gate because they were so into this character
Oh,
and
that's right.
I thought that was really special because I mean and a lot of people talk about I think everybody talks about which Goulds are the baddest and I mean usually Apophis is never considered among the baddest Goulds because of course he's appearing in the
Yeah.
beginning before like some of the like really really intense things happen but I mean he is kind of OG Gould and
Yeah.
like he really was Stargate for I mean he was there the first 5 seasons he kind of had an extremely long run there so I do think there's something special about Apophis but I'm not
Yeah.
sure I would probably feel too afraid to bring him.
I guess he was tied down though, so we couldn't really do much about it.
Yeah, that's true but yeah but no I think it's interesting and I mean I completely agree with you like I've never heard anything from anyone say the set was bad or toxic and you hear so much about that now that it's just really
Yeah.
pleasant to like hear people say yeah I had such a great time on the set and that it ran so long and that I think I mean you also sent a clip from Atlantis so I think I mean I've also heard amazing things about the set of Atlantis too
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, I know. I think it's just it's really nice to see how everyone on set seems to truly genuinely, you know, have friendships off of the show as well. I think that's why also just like with the fandom, with them going to cons and everything, it's kind of like um I think that's, you know, because I also feel like just in general, like the Stargate fandom community is kind of the same way in the sense that, you know, we may not know those in the community don't all obviously know each other. That's impossible. But when you join things like on Facebook groups and different things, it's like everyone for the most part gets along so well and is like very supportive of each other, both with like, you know, enjoying debating different things at the show, but then also like, for example, on Facebook, there's this Stargate Fans United page where, you know, sometimes people will talk about like you know, they don't have anyone else to talk to about Stargate, and then they really enjoy having this like community to actually discuss it with, or maybe they're alone on their birthday and then everyone in the chat like is wishing them happy birthday, or they're about to go through a surgery. So it's just kind of nice. Like I feel like that continuing support kind of like radiates out from it just being just like the show that everyone likes. So I think you do feel that from the cast and crew, and then it radiates out to like the fandom, which is cool. But one funny video that actually isn't a prank, but it was something funny that happened, was to the actress, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Andee Frizzell, and she played
Yes.
the Wraith Queen. And this again is an interview from Dial the Gate, and she was talking about how in order to be the Wraith Queen, how much makeup and everything was on her, all of like the stuff like that she had to get off of her basically after she was done with the scene. And so she had went back to her trailer, and it takes a while to kind of like shower and take off all of that makeup, and it was like taking her a while. And like as she was showering, she could hear like, I guess like there's different trailers that they like unhook off of stuff and then they drive away with the trailer. And so as she was showering, they didn't realize she was there. Like everyone else was gone on set. It just took her a while because of the makeup. And like they didn't realize she was showering, and they started to take away her trailer with her in it while she was showering. And so I'm just like, and she's like yelling at them to like, hey, I'm in here kind of thing. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's so uncomfortable. I could just see that being something that would happen to me or you. If
Oh my
we were
God,
on the
totally.
show, because you're like, that
Totally.
did not just happen.
Oh my God. Yeah, no kidding. No, I completely agree. I would be freaking out too. And yeah, I mean, like that was kind of like an accidental break. But no, I would be freaking out too. But yeah, I mean, that's also like goes to show like I never thought about it how much you would have to like put on and take off being a wraith. Like that must be crazy.
Yeah.
Hours of makeup
Yeah.
application, hours of washing it up. Like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I never thought about like how everyone else that doesn't have to do that would just leave. Like in my
Hmm.
mind, I think of like everyone kind of being around each other and everything. And like, I mean, obviously, obviously she's in a shower, she's gonna be by herself.
Yeah.
But like, but like, you know, in terms of like people being like on set, like I guess, you know, because I don't work in that field, you know, as an actor, right? Like didn't really think about it. And I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. Like if people aren't needing to be there, they're gonna then leave. Like, and if they're setting up everything for the night and everything's all done, like they're all gonna leave. They're not gonna wait around for someone. And so it's like I can just imagine like how awkward, but yet also kind of funny, but like, oh my God, this did not happen moment that was for her. Because
Yes.
because it's just kind of one of those things that you're just like, wait, what is happening? Like, because what do you do? Like you're literally naked in a shower
Yeah.
trying to get someone's attention. Like, I mean, what do you do? Like that's just like, that's awkward.
Oh yeah, I would be freaking out. I mean, it would be bad enough if you weren't in the shower, let alone in the shower. That would be like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would just be super awkward. That's so funny though.
but yeah, but no, overall, like I would say it seems like such a fun environment to work. And I'm really, really
Yeah.
glad that like I have to like say good on Delegate because I think it's really cool that we have all of these little snippets because it did add something so much when they used to do like behind the scenes on DVDs. And I think that's part of the reason. Like I remember back in the day before they would put out DVDs, you really didn't have as much access to this stuff, and it was kind of a special thing. And
Yeah.
I think it's even cooler now because I mean, you can really access everything and you can get information about every little thing and um, hear snippets from actors that maybe appeared on the show once, like we just watched. And I think that's super cool. Like personally, I
Yeah.
think there's something really special and it even highlights more how cool like Stargate is and how interesting the community was and still is, and like that is such an amazing environment.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, with interviews like that, it allows even people that maybe don't know as much about Stargate, that are like younger generations, they might see that and be like, "Oh, that sounds kind of funny. Like maybe I'll check this show out." So even if they're not aware of like who that person was, maybe they haven't seen that episode yet or whatever, like, I think it still creates like an interest in looking into that. And I think Stargate is definitely very unique in that we've seen even with our own kids, right? That they love Stargate. So so yeah, it's
I
cool.
mean, I would be kind of like, I'm curious how many people are watching like a lot of the behind the scenes things. Like if this is something that people do alongside, because I would imagine, I mean, everyone has their own kind of experience in how they interact with the show. And I imagine there's people that maybe they interact with it less because they kind of prefer to keep everything like really fictional. But for some people, I think it's really interesting to see these like extra things and like what's actually going on. And I mean, yeah, on the one hand, it maybe changes your suspension of disbelief, but it can also add to it. So I don't know if that's an aspect of it, like that people have ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear, like, because in my mind, I would imagine it would add to it for people because it's kind of like separate from the show in my view of it all. But yeah, I'd be curious if anyone has any favorite like behind the
Yeah.
scenes like pranks or behind the scenes footage or whatever that they've really liked that we haven't mentioned. Even if they have any links to that or whatever, they could put the link in our comments, like, so we can check it out, because like I love that stuff. So
Yeah, me too. I mean, a quick question, like, I mean, how do you feel? Because you've been to cons, and I haven't really attended a con in person, but I know
yeah.
sometimes at cons they do go into sometimes like set experiences, and how do you feel like this sort of behind the scenes content, like how it maybe differs or compares to like the experience of what they often talk about at cons? I mean, do you feel like this is maybe an aspect where by putting these videos out, it gives people some access to some things that maybe are sort of given at cons that people who can't attend cons can get?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I've only been to a few cons. And I think it just really depends like what the host chooses to ask, and what the audience, like the audience will usually be given the opportunity to ask questions if people are like on a panel, for example, at a con talking about their show, or just the actor themselves talk about all the things they've been in, people have a variety of questions for it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it could be seen as, is kind of like an insight into what you wouldn't otherwise hear about unless you can go to the cons. Maybe it's not in someone's location that they're able to go, maybe it's not in their budget that they're able to afford to go to cons, so it is a way for them to still get that experience. I do find the experience of actually like watching these interviews, like, it feels more thorough to me than at a con, because I think at a con the environment is sometimes kind of chaotic, and um the acoustics are different. So it's like, for example, I'm in Edinburgh,
Oh.
Scotland, and where they have the con here is in like an area near the airport, where it's this massive kind of uh warehouse kind of thing. And so whenever they have people on stage, it's kind of like, I'm just like, oh, they need something to soak up the sound, because sometimes you cannot hear them. It's like echo, 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 echo. And like the sound just echoes across everything, that it's really hard to hear. So sometimes these events don't think of that. And so they'll just have someone using a microphone in this massive space that the sound just echoes off of it. So that can be kind of frustrating, I think, if you're at a con that happens, because it's like you wait around to see these people talk and then you can't hear or understand what they're saying. So that has happened before, but But otherwise, yes, you do get behind the scenes stuff similar to like what you would hear in the interview. So it is a nice way for people to get that if they haven't went to a con. So yeah.
That's really interesting. I never would have thought of that acoustic thing, but I guess
Yeah.
that's super true. And maybe depending on where you're sitting or standing, it's even more. I mean, I guess there's the
Yeah.
experience, like again, you get more of like this community experience, but then I think having this content available is sort of like, I don't know, to me, it's like in academia, a lot of times conferences now have this sort of hybrid approach, um, especially since like lockdowns, because I mean, it started as kind of this way that we could still have them even when people couldn't travel. But I think they a lot of times kept it because it enabled people who maybe had issues with obtaining visas or issues with like actually traveling due to funding, to be able to attend and to get like credit for paper presentation. Um, and so it's like, then I kind of thought like, well, this is like a little bit of like that where you get, I mean, you used to maybe have to go to con, and there's always this aspect like of, yeah, there's the community there and everything, but it's really cool that even now, if you're not there, that there's all these little tidbits and information that you can kind of explore in those moments where you finish the show, but you still need more content.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
yeah, so thank you so much to delegate, and to, I guess, everyone else who makes this videos. We'll have to look for some others, and if anyone knows like other places specifically that make this kind of things, or if you make these kind of things, like definitely show us, because we'll check that out. It's very interesting
Yeah.
to us, and it expands like our understanding of the show and also our appreciation of the show.